Hello, and good evening. I'm Jody Delaney. I'm the Executive Director of the Television Academy Foundation, and I'm here to welcome you all to our Script to Screen panel for summer 2020. Tonight, our class of 2020 is joined by Foundation alumni, and we're happy to have you all here. Our conversation today is with the talent behind the new Apple TV Plus series, Little Voice, including executive producers and co-creators Sara Bareillis and Jessie Nelson, along with the star of the show, Brittany O'Grady. They'll talk to us about how storytellers bring a script to life and what it takes to get a story from the development stage to a successful series. Moderating tonight is Tangcay. She's the artisans editor at Variety, where she's responsible for overseeing content about the craftspeople who work in film, television, music, and theater. What a cool job, Jazz. But before I turn it over to her, to introduce our panel, I want to thank Apple TV Plus so much. They so generously brought this panel together for us. And it's remarkable that Apple TV Plus premiered less than a year ago and has already secured 18 Emmy nominations. So congratulations to the whole team, and thank you again. And before we start, I just want to remind everyone to use the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen, to submit your questions throughout the discussion. And with that, welcome again. Have a great time, and I throw it to you, Jazz.
Thank you, Jody, and thank you to the Television Academy and, of course, Apple TV Plus. I am so excited, as Jody said, to be moderating today's Script to Screen and this conversation with the cast and creator of Apple TV Plus's Little Voice. It is such an incredible series. So if you haven't seen it, tune in, watch it. It's a superb show, and let's get this show on the road. Without further ado, let me introduce the exec producers, Sara Bareillis and Jessie Nelson, and actress Brittany O'Grady. Welcome.
Oh, hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to talk to you and learn about your process and your craft this afternoon. How are you all doing, first of all?
Pretty good overall. I think, all things considered, finding some kind of rhythm in this completely rhythmless time. It's been a bizarre chapter, and I can't believe we're almost at the end of 2020 already. It just seems like it's been a nightmare is what it's been. So it's nice to be with friends and collaborators to talk about something positive.
Yes, and we'll escape the nightmare for an hour or so. But let's talk about this, Sara. I mean, Little Voice was a song that you'd had for years. How did it evolve into this beautiful, incredible TV show? Let's go all the way back.
Well, the song itself was written for my first record, and so it's kind of laid dormant all these years. And but the story of the show coming together was actually J.J. Abrams and I met at an event and eventually had some conversations about doing a television project. He had asked me if I'd ever thought about that, and it seemed like a crazy idea. And Jessie and I had just gotten to the final stages of launching Waitress, and it was up and running, and he was a fan. And so Jessie and my relationship, we were bonded and worked really, really well together on that. And she had simultaneously been working on a songwriting project, and I had been inspired by an early project of JJ's called Felicity. That was about a young woman in New York City, and felt like it would be interesting to see something like that for young people in New York, and to make it really about music. And so it very serendipitously kind of all coalesced, and we started this world of Little Voice. And Little Voice, that song that I wrote for my first record all these years later, became the theme song. And it was all sort of happenstance. And I love those moments, very, very the sweet irony of things. I had been told by my collaborators at the time that the song wasn't good enough to be on my record. And so all these years later, the fact that it's the theme song for a TV show about that time in a young artist's life feels like poetic justice.
And here we are with this show. You talked about your collaboration with Jessie. Talk about that partnership, like how you first met, and you worked on Waitress together, you've now worked on Little Voice together. Like, what makes that partnership so special?
Go, Jess.
Sara and I always laugh that we have this kind of unique karma of being kind of thrown into the deep end together. We had never even written a play, let alone a Broadway musical, and suddenly we were creating a Broadway musical and we were strangers. So, it was a really trial by fire, and really, learning together and struggling together and searching for it together, and that process really made us develop a real trust with each other. And I think we loved figuring out how a scene could launch into a song, or how a song could lead us into a scene. That aspect of our collaboration was really exciting for both of us. So the idea of working together was something we were really looking forward to. And then, suddenly we were doing a TV series when neither of us had ever done anything in TV before, and suddenly we were creating one. So, but again, we had already had that. I think Sara and I share this thing of being deeply insecure and utterly confident in ourselves, all in one. Like we both carry that, like this kind of deep knowing of what we want to do, and then this kind of doubt that we have to navigate through a little bit. And we really wanted to say to young women and to the people watching the show that doubt and that fear is part of the creative process and nothing to run away from. That is the process. So that was a big part of what we were looking to explore in Little Voice. That I would say, to make fear your tailwind and not your headwind.
Yeah.
I love what you said, Jessie, about trust, because I think with good collaborations, that is an essential, bare bones, the absolute must. Because the birthing, we talk a lot about the birthing process, and it was always kind of, it was a cheeky way to talk about it with Waitress, because the whole thing is about a woman who's pregnant and going through, the learning to love her child, but she and love herself through that process. But the birthing process and the creative process is a painful one. And so having someone by your side that you really trust and can weather the storm with you is paramount. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you brought Brittany into the mix through casting. I hear your casting process took around a year. What was it about Brittany that stood out? And talk about that process.
How can you not love Brittany? I mean, from the moment we saw her picture, the molecular structure in the room changed. We just felt like, oh my gosh, is that our Bess? And then Brittany was doing a movie in New Zealand, and so we had a casting session with her on Skype in New Zealand. And Skype, there's a delay and it goes down and you don't have enough bars in your room to get a good picture. And here she's getting direction from me and singing a song for Sara Bareillis, a Sara Bareillis song. And she was just so determined and plucky and full of good cheer, and carried this beautiful kind of vulnerability and tenderness that I felt was a lot of what Sara carries, and must have carried even more so as a young artist, that kind of like a colt becoming a horse. And the Skype would go down and Brittany would bring it up again and keep singing, and we just fell in love with her.
I have one of my favorite sessions with you, Britt. I don't even think we've talked about this yet, it was maybe the second or third time we'd actually talked on the phone, and it was like she had been taking a nap or something. We were up in my office at Steiner Studios, and she had been taking a nap, and she's so sleepy and like, just, no, it's okay, I'd love to talk to you. And she's just like sleepy and just has the sweetest spirit. She is, you are, Britt, you are threw yourself into this so wholeheartedly, and there was so much on your shoulders, and you carried it with grace and kindness the entire time, and that was such a gift to the creation of the show. It was really, really special.
Thank you.
But I loved you being sleepy. It was cute.
You guys made it so easy to have so much passion towards the project, because I think that a lot of times when people create anything, I think you don't have to be kind in this business. And I think this was the first time in a long time. I mean, I'm only 24, so I can say it's the first time in a long time, but it was so refreshing and so comforting to have women like Jessie and Sara to look up to, because they lead with authenticity, kindness, and true honesty for the art. Because I think a lot of times this business can attract, a certain kind of energy or a certain type of like ulterior motive. And I just, the whole point about trust we were talking about earlier, I just felt an immense amount of trust. And it was something that I felt in my soul. And I think that was so important for me. And I don't want to speak for Jessie and Sara, but I think that's something that's important to them as well. So we kind of all had the same values and put a lot of care into everything we do.
I love that. How did you prepare for your audition when you've got to sing a Sara song to Sara, like, and on Skype? So, you've got the added pressure of performing in front, and then you've got like the technology not cooperating with you.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. So Sara was saying earlier how I woke, I actually, the time difference was so different. I think it was like a 17-hour time difference. I could be wrong, from where I was in New Zealand and then from the East Coast, from New York. And so I actually woke up at like 7 a.m. and I just woke up from like trying to like practice or figure things out. So it would be nights where I would just like stay up really, really late and film myself and practice, singing songs that I loved growing up from Sara, Sara's albums, or, I just got hip to the Waitress soundtrack and I had been listening to it. And so I would just hear how these wonderful actors, or Sara's version of Used to Be Mine, I would just listen to it all night and listen to Little Voice and go over and over. And if I didn't like the way something sounded, I tried to fix it. So I practiced a lot. I was just like nights alone in my bathroom, because I was actually living with the other actors for the movie at the time. So I'd just be in my bathroom going, "It's everything I am." So that's how I prepared. And I think that just kind of really was about the work. And then eventually my guard kind of came down once getting to know Sara and Jessie a lot more. The whole trust was built.
Something that's so great about the show, and I was saying it to you earlier, was, you watch the show and it's reflective of, our neighborhoods that we live in. Talk about your casting, aside from, Brittany, and was that a priority for you with the diversity aspect of it all? And yeah, go into that. And how does having an inclusive cast like support the art of storytelling?
Yeah, that was very much our intention, that the piece be a love letter to New York and the diverse music of New York. And so having a diverse cast was just sort of effortless, because we were really trying to show what the city was and what Sara and I had fallen so in love with about the city. So, the more reflective we could be of what we were encountering on the streets and what we were bumping up against, the more it felt authentic to us. And then Sara and I both have people on the spectrum in our background. And so that aspect of the cast was really important to us also. And that was an extraordinary group of actors that we found, led by Kevin Valdez, who plays Louis. And those were some of our most special days on the set, was working with that group of actors, because they just brought so much joy and life and kind of creative freedom to the set with them. And Brittany and Kevin had a really beautiful collaboration also.
Yeah. And, as your cast starts coming together, how did the story change or grow in that development process?
In terms of the writing, you start, writing to the cast that is being assembled, and you make sure your script is nimble enough to be able to incorporate what the gifts of the actors you bring are. I would rewrite a lot on the weekends. Brittany would share stories of her upbringing, or actors would share things with me, and I would try to capture the spirit of that in the writing. And I think it's the same with Sara. You start, writing with the people that you've cast in mind, whether it's a song or a scene, and you kind of try to play to what their fastballs are.
Yeah, I think it's what is really fun about the collaboration at that phase. It's like there's a certain amount of collaboration that happens prior to, opening the gates to the studio and the cameras and all this stuff. We're trying to build a world that feels authentic to us, and then it's populated with people and backgrounds and stories and spirits that I know Jessie and I both really love people too, so we wanted to make them as shiny as they could be in whatever ways felt the most natural to them. And I just was so struck overall by our entire cast, how willing they were to try everything on and to do it sort of unabashedly and fearlessly. So it made it really, really fun to, like, one of the things that happened organically is that the young man who got cast as Samuel, Colton Ryan, is a beautiful singer. So that wasn't necessarily something we knew was going to come out the gate of Brittany and Colton singing together as much as they did in the show. But it was something that was so effortless and so immediate. When it happened the first time, we were like, well, this is going to happen in just about every episode. We can figure it out, because it was just, the chemistry on screen is just incredible, and it's so much fun to watch. So that's the fun of the craft of getting to sort of shape it on the people that materialize.
Yeah. And, this is an audience question from Catherine Chiochi. How is the creative development process different for a TV show versus a Broadway musical?
Well, in a Broadway musical, you're trying to tell an entire story in 2 acts with an intermission. And in a TV show, you're trying to parse out the story over a number of episodes, and hopefully create an episode that will leave your viewer wanting to know, what happens to these characters? And also, we kind of had a rule, Sara and I, that there would be at least 1 new song in every episode, maybe 2. Again, where a musical is an evening of songs. And so you're kind of following the breadcrumbs of that trail to sort of discover what your series is. But I think it's the trajectory, that you're going over a longer period of time. Also in TV, you have the close-up and the cut-to and all these aspects of filmmaking. But in theater, the close-up is kind of the song. You move into a more intimate place with your actor as the song comes, and the lighting and the song, everything supports that. So you have like a different toolbox to work with.
Yeah. Brittany, prior to this, you were on Fox's Star. How did that whole experience, you were performing on there, prepare you for Little Voice?
It prepared me immensely. I think that I don't think I would have been able to do Little Voice if I hadn't had my experience on Star. I think that it was basically like a boot camp. I came from a musical theater background, and then the first time I recorded in a booth was for the pilot, and I had to learn how to sing different styles of music. I didn't think I just had to kind of adjust and adapt and find a new art to a different arena, to a songwriting and not necessarily songwriting, but I learned a lot of respect for, I think, the music industry, even though that specific genre and that show is very drastically different from who I am. But I learned a lot of discipline. And then moving forward to Little Voice, I think that the music and the story and the creative process that I think Sara and Jessie bring to the table, it aligned more with me as a person. But yeah, that show was a lot of work. And so I think I was ready and prepared, like I had my muscles ready to have a lot of work again. I was like, I'm ready to work. What next? So, yeah.
So talk about the collaborative process that you and Brittany had in helping her, play the role and exercise those muscles.
It was, a long unfolding over the course of the season. I mean, meeting her in person, I think I immediately really felt drawn to her sort of gentle spirit. She has, as you're experiencing even now, is just, there's a real kindness about Brittany, which I love and connect to. And again, this willingness, this sort of like willingness to try absolutely anything. This was a lot of music to give to someone. And it was changing all the time, and it was snippets, and I'd be like, we were going to do, I know you prepared this part of the song, but we're not going to do that part of the song. We're going to do this other part of the song. And we're like walking her to the trailer and singing in her ear and being like, and then it goes like this, then it goes, and she's like, So it was like, if you didn't have a sense of humor about it, or you couldn't hold the whole thing a little bit lightly, it would have been a disaster. So thank God we had someone who had the grace that Brittany does. But the more we worked together and the more we went into the studio together, I just fell deeper and deeper in love with her craft as well. I mean, she's this incredible voice, beautiful tone. And I felt like I saw her kind of, I don't know, just develop as a singer over the course of the season. I just saw her get a little more comfortable and kind of get to know her range differently and how to manipulate her voice slightly differently. And I was always just really encouraging her to kind of perform from the inside out, inside of the music. So it was really important that she connect to the lyrics and to remember that as a songwriter, being a songwriter singing your song is a little bit different than being a musical theater artist singing a song or interpreting a song. Just that the intimacy of your relationship as the character with the music is something that has to stay really present. And that was something that she just knocked out of the park, I thought. Yeah. Good job, Britt.
I'm calling you Britt now.
That's fine.
Something that I really love is just this bond that you have with your co-star Shalini, and those scenes that you have. And I don't want to spoil it, but family is such a big theme in the show, and there's a special moment. I mean, talk about how you crafted that bond with her. Like, did you hang out together? Did you all hang out together off set? And yeah, I think Sara said it earlier, but like this chemistry that the entire cast has is incredible.
Yeah, I think I like to say that the energy comes from the top down. So I think I firmly believe in that. And so we're, as you see, we're so lucky to have such kind people in charge giving birth to this project. And I think that a like energy attracts a like energy. So when I first met Shalini, she's just, we had the scene together in the pilot where we're in the apartment and we have such an intimate relationship. And that was something that Jessie, wanted to create for us. And we had a rehearsal with her before we started filming. And so Shalini and I actually decided to meet up at my hotel, and my mom was actually there. And we just ended up talking, and we had so much in common. Representation is also something that's incredibly important to us as women of color. And we talked about that. We talked about being women in this business. And we're just sensitive and goofy, and it was she's a Libra, I'm a Gemini, so we're both air signs, we get along. So it was just sorry to bring the astrology and everything, but so I think that I think Jessie's intuition and Sara's intuition kind of guided that, and J.J. Abrams as well. They're in charge of casting. So I think that I guess it was just something that happened organically. Like, things were kind of on her side. She's a wonderful, strong woman that I look up to, and we've had so many intimate conversations and connected on so much.
Yeah. This is another audience question from Sarah Murphy-Katz, who wants to know a little bit about the creative process in terms of the timing and the order. Like, were the songs written first and informed the writing of the script, or was it the story that was determined first and then the songs were written and added in later?
It was a little bit of both. We had some songs that were pre-existing songs that I actually wrote when I was sort of around the age of our main character. And so there were some songs that have just been, in my little trunk all these years that I shared with Jessie, and we just started there and just being like, which ones are speaking, which are our favorite. And then so we got a chance to kind of write towards some of those. And then other times there would just be, it was very similar well, no, not similar in the sense that there wasn't pre-existing material, but it was similar in the sense of Waitresses. We could sort of just let the songs guide us and then let the scenes guide us and just kind of pass the baton back and forth between music and script. And if there was, like, I'm thinking about Ghostlight, which is our episode 7. Jessie had come up with this incredible concept and, about all these, I don't want to give too much away, but there's a beautiful sequence about songwriting and where inspiration comes from and what has come before. And that really needed its own unique song. So that was something that was written specifically. So it was a little bit of both. Kind of but we do pass the baton, I think, pretty well together.
That's one of the most beautiful perks of working with Sara is, when you ask, could we have a song about hope? Could she have, been part of a songwriting contest about hope? And then, a little MP3 shows up in the morning and she's just written this jewel of a song. And it's just so inspiring to write a scene around it. And it's very, I take it as a real privilege to stand that close to someone who's writing such beautiful material, because it's really an amazing thing to watch these songs come into the world. The gift of songwriting is a very unique gift, and I really have enjoyed getting to witness what that creative process is. This is very different than any other.
Yeah. And you said that some of the songs were, that you had set aside, but what was it like reliving some of those old songs, with like unlocking those memories?
I'm going to tell you, I haven't even told you this, Jessie, but so Jessie has spearheaded this little project of making some companion pieces of music videos to go with the show. And we were reviewing these today and doing sort of final, like, is everything in its place? And I watched one of them and I burst into tears at the end of it. And I didn't feel it coming. I didn't know that I was emotional. I just like wept for like a minute. And I was like, oh my God, I'm very moved in ways that sometimes I don't even, maybe I suppress, or I'm just not in touch with because I'm dealing with other things. But I'm very moved by watching this story come to life. And it's not my story per se, but to watch a story that I connect with so deeply, and about a young artist finding their voice and the challenges and how hard it is to be that age and stick up for yourself for the first time and find your community and have the belief in yourself. It's something, I'm 40 now and I still, I still crumble under these pressures all the time. So it's very moving to me, and in ways that kind of get emotional sometimes. Which is something I love. I love working on things that I really care about.
Yeah. What made Apple the perfect platform? There's so many places where, the show could have ended up. Apple was like the perfect partnership. Like, talk about how that happened and why Apple.
Well, the music component of Apple is such a beautiful marriage with our show. To have music is so important to them. They have a platform for it. And the synergy between that part of Apple and our show has been really, really lovely. And I also think, they really went out. One of my favorite stories about Apple is when they put out the iPhone, they got horrible reviews because everybody said, oh, it's flat, and people like to hold something, and the keypad isn't right, and nobody's going to use it. And that became sort of Apple's mantra, that if you're getting a bad review, you're doing something right, because you know that you've got something here, and people will ultimately find it. And so there's a nice courage over there, a spirit of courage and trailblazing. I think you can see it with some of the shows they're putting out. So, and for many reasons, it was a good match with us.
Totally. I was going to add that there was in that same spirit of, they swung big, and they were ready to give us a whole season. I think Jessie and I went out thinking, we'll do a pilot somewhere. We'll see what this is like. And we got the green light for a whole season. So there was, a vote of confidence in that I think was courageous. And then now here we are.
People want a second season, but there's a scene, I think, where Bess is told, we're talking about I guess criticism, and like Bess is told at one moment, like, your music is too earnest and too sentimental, and like, there's a struggle as she fights to embrace who she is, and you see her grow from that. Like, how do you handle that, like the criticism, the rejection that you face as women in the industry? I guess all of you can answer that question.
Well, there's so many lessons I've learned along the way. One of the big ones is you feel so horrible today after rejection, but it doesn't mean you're going to feel that way tomorrow. To not go too global with every feeling that you're feeling and write your whole life into that feeling, but to know, it's a river, and things will shift and change. And Sara uses this beautiful phrase of really learning the difference between collaboration and concession. And I think that's such an important part of the journey of an artist. The worst feeling in the world is to betray yourself. And, to know that you're doing something and it's not right for your artistry. And so that's something that we really wanted to put forth in the show. The moments where Brittany's character either swallows something because she's trying to get ahead, or has the courage to stand up for herself. To look at that delicate dance we all do, or have done, hopefully begin to do it less.
Yeah. What? Go ahead, Sara.
Oh, I didn't know if we were all supposed to talk about criticism.
Yeah, no.
I second everything that Jessie said. I think the one thing I was going to say is just that I don't handle it that gracefully. It is painful. And I think one of the lessons that I have learned, in addition to that idea that things change over time, is that, the painful parts of our life are as holy as the joyful ones. So understanding that pain is a part of being human. And so I think it's okay to just allow things to be painful, and to trust in that idea of motion and movement forward. But also try not to invite in too much of people's opinions, on things that you make, unless they're really trusted opinions and you want feedback. But the noise that happens online so much of the time is actually really just unhelpful and quite toxic. So I don't seek that out too often.
What about you, Brittany?
I was just reflecting on like the experience of the show, and the one really beautiful thing, I think, playing Bess, and something that I learned, I was given permission to feel authentically through the character, and to have that experience as a young woman, and to have women who are guiding you and leading the way was such a blessing for me. And I just wanted to like say on a positive, I think that this experience as an actress, because I know there's so many actors, actresses, actors, everybody who is in the business, they experience rejection consistently. Like that's a part of the process. But I feel so, I can't tell you how important and how grateful I feel in this particular experience on this show, to have permission from Jessie and Sara to trust my ability as an actress, and to reflect their personal art. And that was something that was so important to me, and hopefully, I hope and I believe it did justice for that. And that's like a change, like, Jessie and Sara are creating a change in the work business. I felt very protected. I felt very heard, and I've had experiences where that was not the case, and it's a little more old school. And I just think that the one thing I want to say about this process, and something that's super important, is it is so great and exceptional. This is how it should be. It is a set where you have women like Sara and Jessie giving you permission to do your work and do it well, and to reflect those honest emotions when it comes to rejection, how that does shape a person, how it shaped Sara and who she is, how it shaped Jessie and who she is. We had so many conversations about that on set. So I just wanted to say how empowering it is to have these two women as our creators. It could have been a completely different experience. I could go on and on.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Britt.
Yeah, you guys deserve that.
Do you want to talk about the set, the environment that you created behind the camera and in front, and why that was so important? Because I think what Brittany said, it's so refreshing to be moderating this panel with women. So yeah, talk about what you strove to do behind the scenes.
I think Sara and I think most creative people are vulnerable and don't have the thickest skin. And I know in my day, I haven't done my best work when people are bullying me or shouting at me, and some people do. Some people love, anger, and it's a very motivating tool for them. So everyone has their own way to access it. But it felt like the particular group of souls we assembled were vulnerable people, and not that there aren't hard days, and not that people get short, and all that happens in the course of making a series. But on the whole, we tried to lean into hiring kind people, hiring people who weren't afraid to be vulnerable, and creating an atmosphere where they could do their best work.
Yeah.
I think something I observed, because I had not been on a TV set before, I did a lot of just looking and learning from Jessie, and Jessie's whole approach is deeply humane. As she's saying, it allows, she's asking people what's happening at home, and she's letting people come to work as a three-dimensional human being every day. So I think that breeds a lot of comfort and a lot of safety for almost everybody. We have our, as she said, hard days and people who responded differently to that environment. But I think that was something that I found to be really, really inspiring, of just allowing everyone to show and do better work, I think, that way. So that came from Jess.
Making a TV show is such a team sport, for better or worse. You are so dependent on the people around you. You're not alone in your room crafting something. You're making it with 100 people. And the more you're all united towards something, we could feel it on the days of the set when we were all really in tune with each other. The better the work, it just elevates everything.
Yeah. Was the songwriting process collaborative in that sense, or did you lock yourself in a room, and if you did get writer's block, like, how did you tackle it? Did you run to set and be like, Jessie, Brittany, I need inspiration?
Yes. Yes, all of that. Some of it was isolated, some of it was very collaborative. A little bit embedded into Jessie and my rhythm as collaborators is we sort of share early and share often, so we can kind of steer the ship together. And I had other wonderful team members that were helping me. You know, Elizabeth Zeman is one of the people who's a music coach to Brittany, who was incredibly helpful to shape things and to help them live on set. There's a lot of musicality to the show that is separate and aside from just what happened in Bess's hands. So it was, there were people I could lean on and help. And we had an incredible a cappella group. And so we turned to some of our Broadway cohorts, people like Dadia Di Gialinardo, who helped do some arranging. And so it was a team sport. But the songwriting, thankfully, that was not the part of this show that was the hardest. That part we got through.
So what was the hardest? Because I'm going to ask you now that you've opened that door.
I should have said that. I mean, for me, it's I love Jessie uses this metaphor about the show. It's like a hungry bird's mouth. It's just I think the pace of it. First of all, just the volume of content that you're creating is enormous. And I had, again, never done this before. I'd never done a movie. So I was a little bit shell-shocked by the amount of work. It just is incredible. And then the pace is so quick. So once you're done with one episode, you feel like, throw a party, we're done. But nope, you got to go to the production meeting because we have to do location scouting. Like everything has to start moving on to the next episode. So it's just this wild marathon that, continues to be a hungry mouth in certain ways. And that's the beauty of creating something that has a life. But it was a lot.
And for Brittany, like Brittany would finish an episode on Friday and be like, have given everything and just be spent. And we were like, and on Sunday, you'll be learning 2 new songs for the next episode and some piano parts. Everybody, it was like being in the basketball playoffs. There was just like, you didn't get a lot of downtime. We were all, part of that, I think, was the fact that Brittany got cast at the end of the process. We only had a few days with her before we began shooting. So we weren't able to bank a lot of the songs and get time in the studio with her prior to actually shooting. So she was learning guitar and piano and so many songs and long scenes in the script and adjusting to living in New York and, so much at once. And she even landed with us when she had strep throat, right, Britt? So, she had a lot to navigate, and she did it with such grace and such honesty, when she needed a breath, and she really let us into her process. So that was a very special thing.
What was the turnaround? And you're talking about the episodes. Like, what was the typical turnaround?
You have no turnaround. You're doing it all simultaneously. It never stops. Like during your shooting, and then you have a lunch production meeting, and then you're rewriting the scenes that night, and then Sarah's creating new parts for the new scene for the episode that's coming, and Brittany's being given a new piano part after she's mastered another piano part. And it's a lot. It's a lot of plates going at once. You have to really keep your sense of humor.
Did you lock the show before we went into lockdown, or were you still doing post after?
This is how we knew we had an angel on our shoulder. The day we finished the mix and the color timing was the day Apple had to shut down all their shows. So I just had to do some color timing remotely and some visual effects and things like that. But we got, the bulk of the work done.
Wow. Miracle. But let's go with like one of our last questions. But do you have a favorite memory from the set to share?
Give that to Britt.
I'm trying to think. I think one of the coolest experiences was was Governor's Island. I think that was a lot of fun for episode 105. I think I have one specific memory that I thought was super interesting. It was, we were doing Simple and True, the scene for Simple and True, and my character was supposed to, I don't know if I'm revealing too much, but she had a rough go around, so she handled it with, we all have our moments where we're just like, oh, alcohol will do the trick. Oh, this is like, it's so serendipitous. Like I mean, it was just a little bit, but I thought that was really funny. Everything about the show was so serendipitous, and there were so many different connections. And there was one really strange one that actually just came to mind. It was the end of episode 102, and it's called I Will Survive. And as soon as we finished, the last scene that we filmed was with Colton and I singing Valerie. And we're leaving the park, Madison Square Park, and there's a woman literally singing I Will Survive. Oh. And I was like, stop, universe. This is too crazy. I thought that was like, that was a moment where I was like, wow. I do think Jessie and Sara always said that, there was something beyond us that was really moving the show forward. So I just trusted that. That was some really cool serendipitous telling moments.
That makes me think of the scene in the pilot where Bess is riding in Central Park, and we had all these meetings about the water trucks and getting the rain and the drop of rain on the thing and how we're going to make rain. And we get to Central Park and we're shooting the scene, and Bess is riding on the thing, and then legit, I kid you not, a thunderstorm shows up out of nowhere. Blue sky, thunderstorm cloud lands. They're shooting the whole thing. It's really rain. Brittany's grabbing the dog. The shots are incredible. They look amazing. And then gone. And then it was gone. It was just as if the clouds took their cue, and they're like, it's time to move in. And then they moved away. It was amazing. And another favorite moment of mine is when Kevin rapped, and he gave a thank you speech, and it was just unforgettable. Just the joy and the pride, and him just thanking the crew, and looking forward to what was to come, and just his spirit is just unforgettable. So that was another favorite moment of mine.
Was that in the script, or was that just like an ad-lib moment or an improv moment?
Which one?
Kevin rapping.
Oh, no, she meant when we wrapped the show.
Oh,
the day
I was
the
like,
show
wait.
ended. But no, Kevin rapping was very scripted and very with it.
Okay. What are you hoping that episode 9 is going to air this week? It hasn't, the finale. What are you hoping the audiences take from the show?
Just the feeling that whatever your voice is, whether you're an artist, whatever, a teacher, whatever you're interested in, that the journey to speak from an authentic place in yourself, to find the courage to do that is a worthy one, and also just this feeling of hope that you can find your way to what your dreams and your goals are, whether small or large goals. The feeling of continue, don't give up.
Yeah. Did either of you want to add to that?
Brett, you want to add anything?
I think Jessie said it all, just like everybody kind of finding validation and their authenticity and bravery for that.
I love that.
Perfect.
I have been struck by a lot of artist friends talking to me about watching the show and saying that they really feel like one of the things that we did well was capture the struggle of being a young artist and how hard it is. And I think that fits in nicely with what you're saying, Jess, about that pursuing something you love is effortful. It is hard, and that the journey is the destination. That cliche, but it really is. It's being on the path is its own reward. And then if you shoot it really beautifully, it makes a great TV show.
I know, it's such a beautiful portrayal of New York. I think when I started to watch, I was like, I miss New York. I can't get on a plane right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as creatives, like, you know, how have you been doing in the pandemic? Like, have you been creating or?
For me, I would say good days and hard days. You know, being a writer, you're already so alone so much of the time and in your room, and you kind of have to quarantine yourself in order to get something written. You want to go outside, but it's like, no, stay inside, keep writing. But then there are days it's very hard to focus, and with all that's been going on in the world and the heartbreak of what's going on in the world, that definitely sits heavily on our souls. So for me, it's been a real, like, whoa, you know, kind of like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
I'm a basket case, so I'm just all over the place. I'm like weeping uncontrollably, and then talking to my therapist twice a week on the bad weeks. Nature has been an incredible balm for me in these times. So I'm finding forests everywhere, like anywhere I can get into the woods is where I'm going. I feel like as a creative, I'm actually just sort of metabolizing right now, and I'm watching and observing and don't quite know what to say yet. But just recently made the record of the songs from this show as a concept album. So that will get released relatively soon. And that was like the most creating I've done in a long time. And it felt really beautiful. So yeah, I think it's just a really strange time, and all I can say is vote. That's all I can say, is that there's so much change that's needed, and that's the thing that the really oppressive force right now is feeling that dysfunction for me. And I mean, for all of us, I'm saying for me, it's a really oppressive thing in my mind. And so vote, please, everyone, vote early, vote early.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for this beautiful show, the music, the acting, the soul of it all. You know, it's a show we needed. And if you're not watching it, seek it out. It's on Apple Plus TV. So thank you to Apple Plus TV for tonight. Thank you to the Television Academy, the audience, for your questions. But thank you, Sara, Jessie, and Brittany. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.